Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of The Inductive Economy, the brand new podcast series exploring the intersection of technology, economics, and individual autonomy. Right here, only on ContraMinds. We have a great series of guests lined up for you, and we can't wait to get started. Our guest today is a seasoned HR professional and a published multi-time best-selling author. Siddharth Tripathi is a senior principal at Conferry, as well as the author of books such as Blowfish, The Virgins, and my personal favorite, unMind. In our conversation, over the course of this episode, we talk about startups, culture, personality white blood cells, music, and movies. It was a fun conversation, and I had plenty to learn from Siddharth's insights and experience. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Siddharth Tripathi. So Sid, your career spans various industries from, in HR, from GE to Zomato to Times Internet. Can you talk a little bit about your journey at the early days of your career as a young professional, finding your way in the world of HR, and what drew you to it in a magnetic sense?
So I happened to get into HR accidentally. I did my MBA in marketing and finance, and in GE I was not in HR. I was in sales, and I was actually the area sales manager for car leasing in Delhi. Their car leasing business, which was one of their only B2B businesses at that time. That is GE Consumer Finance. And I happened to have a friend in Hewitt, which is now called Aon, who used to harp about the fact that consulting is awesome, consulting is great. And so I just sort of went for an interview, and I met a couple of people there who were really impressive. The people who interviewed me, and I thought, why not give it a shot? And they were willing to give people a shot who did not did not have a typical HR background, right? Which is something very interesting about firms like Hewitt and Aon and other firms as well, that they are not necessarily looking for people who've done their MBAs in HR, right? They are also looking for industry expertise, and I happen to have some understanding of financial services at the time, and that was a very, very big vertical for them. So that's how I came into Hewitt. I consulted, I began my career in HR as a compensation consultant, which is solid grounding because I think what I've seen in HR is a typical divide where there are people who do comp and then there are people who don't do comp, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't get well-rounded HR professionals, because they sort of tend to specialize very fast. Like in the first 2-3 years, they decide that I want to do only this. But thankfully for me, that did not happen. So I did like compensation consulting for a couple of years in Hewitt, and then within Hewitt also I started doing other HR solution areas. For example, I started doing leadership, I started doing performance management, organization design, and then my career was mostly into consulting firms. So from Hewitt, I went to Hay Group, which is now called Conferry, and I'm back in Conferry again. And then I went to Tars Watson, which is another consulting firm. And I worked in the Middle East. I worked in APAC. I worked in India. So that's another great thing about consulting firms, that eventually, if you last long enough, then you'll end up working in multiple geographies. And then I forayed into line HR, and I think the line HR perspective is sort of important, slightly overrated, but important. So you need to know the other side. It's important to understand the other side as a consultant, because actually for me, I think I'll always be a consultant. So whether I'm in line or in a consulting firm, my outlook is always that of a consultant. So in line also, the roles that I did were typically a COE role. So I headed performance compensation and benefits for Zomato for a couple of months, about 10 months or so. Then I moved to Times Internet. I headed performance rewards, HR analytics for them for about 3.5-4 years. And the typical COE roles are consultant roles, essentially. You are advising, more or less, not really to a large extent, apart from a few key processes, for example, the appraisal process or so on, you don't really execute per se. That is the HRBP work, right? So And then, I headed HR for a startup for a couple of months, about 6, 7 months, and then I came back to consulting. And I've been in Conferry ever since. So that's been my career graph. Yeah, happy to answer any questions on that. Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you went from a sales to HR, and what were those? So I want to split this question into two parts. First part is, what were the initial days of the transition like from sales to HR, and what was the second set of challenges that you faced in terms of, as you said, you moved into different verticals, right? In terms of leadership, HR analytics, compensation. I mean, you started off with compensation, but you moved into other aspects of HR consulting, right? So, what are the learning curves over there for you in the first initial entry phase, and when you decided to specialize and said that yes, this is my land and I will now till it.
See, in the beginning, when you're really young, I think if somebody really gets apprehensive about learning something new, that's like the point where you fail completely. So, for me, it was like from moving from G consumer finance to a Hewitt. I never gave it a thought. And I think the good thing was nobody who hired me gave it a thought, or nobody who hired me was like being overcautious or advising me too much about it. That's a big change for you, and that's very good, because then you feel that there's something that you should be feeling nervous about or anxious about. So that never happened to me. And I think the trick lies in actually looking at things from a business lens. I think that is one of the biggest things I see lacking in most HR professionals. And we always complain about HR not having a seat on the table. And the reason why HR does not have a seat on the table is there is a vicious cycle. First, the CEO believes that HR should just execute, and I'll tell HR what to do. And the other bit is that HR also believes that. They believe I should not have a seat on the table. Like they really don't have it in them. I have seen extremely few, I can count on my fingertips, HR heads who have a genuine seat on the table. And the reason for that is they don't really look at things from a business lens, right? And if you don't really look at things from a business lens, you'll always be a support function, right? And that's where the transitions become easy. If you look at if you look at solutioning from a business lens, then the solution that you arrive at, learning that solution becomes easier because you're trying to apply that solution, right? If you get too awed by all the IP that is around you and all the talk around potential and all the multiple slang typical words that are used in HR, right? Then you'll not be able to do it. But the only thing that you have to think of is how does it logically make sense, right? Uh, you know what I'm saying, right? Common sensically, everything, if you remove all the jingo, right? You remove all the words that we use generally to describe things that make them sound very complicated. Common sensically, if you apply them, they're very simple to understand. So the learning curve, especially in a consulting firm, the learning curve becomes easier because you are actually trying to solve real world problems where you have very limited time to solve them. The client is always on your head, right? So you either learn or you become a very ordinary consultant, right? So for me, I think none of the transitions are very difficult. You're put in a situation which is what Calvin says, right? In Calvin and Hobbes, there is a strip which says that uh, how does creativity happen? And he says last minute panic, and I think that's very true, right? Last minute panic is what consultant's life is always, right? So you put in a situation where you have very limited amount of time and you have to crack something, right? You don't have the comfort of saying that you can do it when you feel like doing it, and you don't have annual KPIs where you have to wait for 12 months before you are assessed. Every project you're being assessed on, and so learning is not an option essentially. That's a great thing about consulting. That's what I love about consulting. You go to a new industry and you need to learn that industry in and out, because the moment you go into a meeting with the CEO or the CHRO or any of these folks, these are people who have spent 30 years in that industry, 20 years in that industry, right? And you wouldn't have had exposure to that industry probably, or you would have like done one or two projects with a client, right? So how fast you can learn, right? Is there is a proportionality to, how credible you are in front of the client. So I think the answer to your question is that learning is not really an option here. You sort of have to learn. And the other bit that is important, why you have to learn a spectrum and not specialize, in my opinion, is, and this is something that a lot of people would argue against, because people will feel that specialization is important. I feel specialization is important, but the problem with specialists is that they have a man with a hammer syndrome. Like, they'll solve a problem only with the hammer of that thing that they know. So if somebody tells you that, my sales force is not performing, and you are a comp and pen guy, you'll start looking at the incentive plans. If you're a leadership guy, you'll start looking at the engagement data, you'll start looking at their assessment data, right? But the problem may not lie in one specific area. The problem would be like lying in multiple areas and needs to be combined together. So the only way to solve problems holistically is to know the entire solution set, right? You can't be like knowing one part of a solution set. And that's where you can actually relate to business. You can actually not be an enabling function, but be actually an active contributor in business success. Because you are able to solve the problem by looking at various lenses, or all of them may be HR lenses, but various HR lenses instead of only one or two HR lenses.
Right. There's an interesting thing that you said earlier, which is that beneath all the jargon, beneath all the lingo, is a simple business outcome that needs to be met. So I want to dig into this a little deeper, the first half and not the second half. Because I think that we are very interestingly at a time where there is a lot of jargon being used, there is a lot of highfalutin terms being used, right? And many people seem to be attracted to the usage of such terms quite naturally or unnaturally. I'm not sure. You should probably, you can probably help me out with that. But in your opinion, what is it that makes people really addicted to jargon? And what is the cost of it if you confront that problem? Let's say with a colleague, right? You're with a colleague and they start using certain terms. And how will that conversation go if I tell them, yeah, don't tell me all this. Talk to me in English. Like, there's that famous scene in, I don't know, there's a Jeremy Irons and Kevin Spacey movie, right, about the 2008 financial crisis. And Jeremy Irons has a great dialogue where he tells an analyst from the bank, talk to me like a 3-year-old or a golden retriever, right? So can you just talk to me a little about, why this predisposition exists and how do you confront it to get people to think simpler and in more clear terms?
Predisposition exists, I think because some kind of insecurity, some kind of an inferiority complex, and we need to sort of put on an entire wall of jargons to hide behind it a lot of times. And it's a combination, right? See, my career has been very, very varied, and in terms of I have taken a lot of risks. I have quit to write a book. For 8-9 months I was not working just because I wanted to finish my first novel, and then I went back. The one thing that really dissatisfies me about how things are is how how HR is treated, right? And how HR professionals also treat HR, right? And that's where I think the crux lies, right? We hide behind jargon and we hide behind such complexities because we don't feel confident enough that we'll be able to go out and solve something genuinely, right? It's like I was recently in a meeting where somebody was trying to explain why competencies, right? And the person went into the fact that the IP of that consulting firm is so well researched and how it has come through from research done by Harvard professors and so on and so forth, and went into that entire 3-4 minute of monologue where the answer was very, very simple,
right?
And this was the CEO on the other side, right? And for him, all the things that this person was saying did not matter at all, right? That guy has an attention span of 30 seconds, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so the point is the answer to that question, what's in it for me? Right? And when you are not able to answer that question, you sort of tend to use all these complex jargons to sort of assume that it will sort of in a way make the person comfortable that there is some merit to what the person is saying and therefore it's okay, right? I think that's why it has become so prevalent. I therefore do not sort of make, I am actually, maybe even this podcast, coming on this podcast is also very strange for me because I don't like doing that, and I don't like writing LinkedIn posts for the same logic that I do not subscribe to most of the things that are being written there, and I don't identify with it, I don't relate to it, and I don't want to also subject people to the harassment of me writing complex stuff and then they having to read it and then pretend to like it also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's a very so I in preparation for the meeting I went back and I reread Patty McCord's Powerful, so where she talks about how the people function within Netflix really has a seat at the table because she again focused on a similar line of thinking that you had mentioned, which is it has to be tied to business oriented outcomes, and B, she had a boss in Reed Hastings who believed in that, and there's a long-term relationship there also. So
correct.
She was with Reed at Pure Software, I think, if I'm not getting the name mistaken.
Yeah.
So that relationship is one part, and the understanding of outcomes is the second part, and that's where the culture deck came out.
Correct.
Right. So looking at India, where we have a large bunch, we have a very active and energetic demographic interested in building great things, providing great service, and you've also seen it up close and personal. What is the relationship between culture and what is the dimension in which HR can contribute to it, amplify it, and have there been cases where you've seen HR having to put out certain fires, the function having to put out certain fires because the cultures were not necessarily oriented for progress or positivity?
Culture should not be HR's agenda. That's crap. Culture is CEO's agenda. Culture is the agenda of every business head. I am not the whole thing of attributing HR as the custodian of culture is absolute crap. Because what is culture? Culture is, Vignesh, the conversation you have with your boss and your colleagues when you come to work and throughout the day. That is the experience you take with you in the evening, and do you feel energized to go back the next day? I don't know how to define culture in a more complex word, like in terms, how do you feel about an organization, right?
Right.
And you will see that there are certain nuances to it which are geographical. For example, an American company has a certain kind of culture, and you can sort of I know it's like typecasting it, but it has a certain kind of culture which is born out of what America is. And Japan has a certain kind of culture. So Japanese companies have a certain kind of culture depending on what Japanese culture is, right? But after that, if you brought that culture dimension in, you go a little in. Who owns culture?
It is the CEO's agenda.
Yeah, it's the leadership agenda. It's the CEO's agenda. Just attributing it to HR कि आप culture देख लो is like.
Do you think that is like a uniquely Indian problem?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I know. And the other bit about culture is like, the thing that culture is about what you do on celebrations. कि आपने दिवाली party क्या की और आपने evening में. And the other bit which has come from America into India is this work hard, party harder wala concept where you are like कि the whole culture of a place is defined by the leaders as how hard we partied.
Yeah.
What is that, man? Like you just took out a couple of people for drinks, right? And they sort of collapsed on the floor. So great culture. Right? So I don't know. I mean, I have never seen it as an HR agenda. I don't see it as an HR agenda. If somebody comes and tells me, I'm willing to have a debate on that. If you put culture on the KRAs of scorecard of the CHRO, then put it on the scorecard of everybody, right? Because the news, you talk to anybody about company's culture, what do they talk about? Do they and just ask the right questions about culture. दिवाली party में क्या हुआ ना मत पूछो. मतलब don't ask कि रंगोली किसने बनाई and what happened. please, let's ask them, how do you feel about the place? Are you given the autonomy to do your own work? Do you feel oppressed? Do you feel happy? Do you feel like adding value? Do you feel like speaking out? Right? And whose responsibility is it? The people that they're interacting with every day, right? Not the HR business partner, not the HR head. So that is my point of view on culture. I think culture is sort of, and why I feel so vehemently and strongly about it, because I have been in places where people have this, memorized 5-6 lines about culture, and you find it in startups all the time. Like there is this startup founder, 27, 28-year-old, like this is like absolute typical. He'll come in, he'll have some Bain guy or BCG guy who would have told him some 3-4 lines on culture. उसको रट लिया उसने, ठीक है? उसके नीचे तो कुछ नहीं आता है. He doesn't know how to manage people. He doesn't know how to handle people. He has no knowledge about, when you bring in professionals, what to do with them, how to treat them. So the only thing he'll tell the HR head that he hires, ये culture देख ले रहा है यार. I want like
kick-ass culture.
Kick-ass culture, yes. Yeah. I want to grow via my culture.
Yeah.
So, right. So it's really tiresome. I have been in conversations where I've been very close to just blowing up. Like listening to the guys, listening to these folks is terrible. So, but I think some of the more mature organizations have understood it well.
Do you think sometimes that, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think that, so having a outside in perspective, right? The question I want to ask you is, have you seen, what does it take for a young CEO that you said, a 27, 28-year-old CEO, to make that transition correctly, given the fact that they are bound to make errors because they are people?
Yeah. See, from a managerial perspective, what I have seen, like I can't tell them how to run business, because in most cases, what I have seen is people know how to run the business, or they are provided augmentation on that part from the private equity firm or the VC that has invested in them. Right?
Absolutely.
Because they can't allow them to fail, which is the vicious circle of private equity investing, and then you go into, कि अच्छा मैंने invest कर दिया, now this company has to grow, so the next guy can come in and then invest in, all that. So the moment a big private equity firm has invested in you, your company will grow, right? That's the probability event, which I think 0.95 की probability है उसकी. Just take out data. Let's see if Sequoia has invested in a firm. How many such firms have failed before the second round?
Correct.
Right. So anyway, so the point is that Sequoia or any such firm will make sure that you are augmented in terms of anything which is lacking in terms of business capability. Right. So let's say if you are a great tech guy, they'll make sure that you get some help from a running the business perspective and ops perspective by either getting you professional help, hiring a professional on your behalf, or being actively involved in that aspect, so that you're not. So they understand that. But I think all of these firms don't understand the fact that being a CEO is much, much more. And one of the things about being a CEO is to look at handling the N-1, right? How do you manage the N-1? How do you manage the inherent conflict in various functions who are trying to get to the same agenda, but their mini functional agendas might be very different or in conflict with each other, right? How do you grow talent? How do you genuinely grow talent, right? How do you mentor people? How do you let people do what they have to do? Give them the autonomy and without feeling threatened by them, without feeling insecure about what you lack, right? I think nobody spends time in really coaching the new CEOs, right? Really helping them get through that gap. And the thing with that may be causing it is because the people who are in these PE VC firms have never headed large organizations or never headed organizations like that, right? So they don't see it like that. They just see it as a business. उनको लगता है कि this is a $1 million business. We can grow it to a $500 million business. Back of the envelope calculations makes all sense. Let's just go ahead and do it, right?
Does that annoy you? Like I'll ask you openly, because you brought up You brought up a personal pet peeve of mine. Okay, there are multiple episodes on ContraMinds where I have raised these questions to a lot of CEOs, academics, leaders, that in India there is this problem where there is a high amount, there is like a large quantity of people who have never held operating experience,
Yeah.
who end up becoming VC. So Reid Hoffman has this famous story where post college he wanted to go work at a VC firm, and they wrote back to him saying we only hire people with operating experience. So he went, got operating experience, and came back. And the second story that also, I'm just sharing this because it means so much to me. There is a talk that Vinod Khosla gave at Stanford GSB, where he says that whenever we get some kid who's come from Harvard or Stanford to work at our firm, and they start advising the founder, I ask them to go stay. I ask them to just leave the room and wait for me. And then once the meeting is done, he meets that kid and he says, "Hey, I know you're a really smart kid with your Harvard and Stanford MBA, but unless you have run a company, you have not earned the right to advise a founder." Do you think this is actually the fact that people are investing in companies, not understanding the complexity that a CEO has to deal with to get the ship moving in the right direction, actually adding harm to the likely success of a company?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. The fact that you're not able to advise the CEO right is definitely adding harm. Like I can there's several companies that occur to me where there has been extremely toxic work cultures. Simply because I think the CEO is extremely intelligent, extremely smart, but the CEO was never made self-aware, was never told that
Do you think
this.
sometimes that it's also because of a lack of empathy from the VC side, that they have not been in those shoes, so they can neither advise correctly nor they can really understand the challenges? Do you think that can also be a problem?
No, I also, that may be a possibility, but I also believe they subscribe to it. I believe they agree to the fact that it's okay to be extremely toxic also. Because see, just having operational experience is not enough. What kind of operational experience did you have, right? Like let's say you worked in a startup XYZ, or you built a company from 1 to X, and building a company from 1 to 100 doesn't mean that you ran the company really well. There can be a significant number of permutations and combinations why that company succeeded. Right place at the right time, with the right amount of money. It's like I was discussing a few days back that you you look at a company which has been given like $200 million, right? And the number of pivots that the company goes through, and look at the guy who started his own business, okay, जिसके पास जो है 20,000 रुपए थे, या $20,000. Yeah, how are you comparing? Like, it's like I made a mistake. यार ये तो ठीक से नहीं हो रहा है. अच्छा ठीक है, let's put another $15 million in this, right? And the Sequoia guy and the PE firms are telling you, ha, ठीक है, it's okay. Because I'm waiting for the B round, right? So it's okay. So what I'm trying to get at, a lot of time that experience also may not help you, because you may have an experience where you are like ki, with the words that I really hate, which is like 1% done, hustle, growth hacking, where the founder is under tremendous pressure by the VCs to actually grow at a particular rate. The rate is unreasonable. Okay, it's impossible to grow at that. Bijus is a classic example, and Bijus, actually there are lots of Bijus. Okay, Bijus has become prominent basically in the news. So you are supposed to grow in 2 years or 1 year at a particular rate, which somebody has calculated in the back of the envelope. Okay, without any proper understanding of what the market is all about, what your product is, there is a product market fit or not, वो सब तो छोड़ दो, ठीक है? So because everybody is me too, ये 10 ये 4 लोग आ गए, they have great pedigree, we have to invest in them, right? So basically now there is a 1 year target in terms of you have to grow at 100x or whatever it is, right? How would you learn how to run a company? You don't have time to learn to run a company. You are thinking about the next valuation round. Next valuation round is not about running the company. Go Mechanic is another example of that, right? So the people who have operational experience, I'm not sure what kind of operational experience they have. Like I would say, get somebody from Tata's to come and come and join a VC firm, right? Get somebody with 20 years of experience in a Tata or maybe or even a Reliance to run a VC firm. Let them. I'll see what kind of businesses they want to invest in. You know, it'll be very interesting to see, right?
No, I agree. I completely agree. It'll be hilarious to say the least. Like
Yeah,
it'll be
yeah,
like a
yeah.
lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, a lot of fun to watch. Correct.
Lot of fun to watch. Sid, I'll come to your books. So you're also a published author,
Right.
and I found out. I found you through unMind, your incredible graphic novel on the insights of Ramana Maharshi. So we'll get to the other books, but I want to start with this because I think it's a very interesting moment for those ideas. Because we are talking about startups, because we are talking about high pressure environments, we're talking about unreasonable expectations, we're talking about self doubt, we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about deteriorating mental health. With the insights that you have gained while working on the book, how do you think? What are some interesting ideas from the life and work of Ramana Maharishi? Would you say 2 or 3 things that would help at least calm a frustrated entrepreneur down? And then I'll add one caveat here that to the audience that it takes practice. It just because you have the insight, it does not mean that everything will change. You have to practice it so it becomes second nature or first nature.
Um, it's very tough to derive something or distill something out of it, and to give something Instagram worthy bite to an entrepreneur to calm him down. I'll tell you why. Because philosophy has turned into spirituality, and philosophy has turned into Instagram posts. So and WhatsApp updates, where you have these 3-4 lines which sound very wise to you. I mean, now I'm not talking about you, but sound very
No,
wise to
no,
us. And
I'll be honest, it includes me also. Okay.
and
I'll
then
read some quote, I'll be like, wow, but I'll be honest, I tend to fall into that pattern. But now what I do is if I find something that is interesting, I'll go pull up the source material, see what's 2 paragraphs above and 2 paragraphs below.
Yeah.
So I understand what that guy is talking about. Because I've been fooled too often by these single sentence prophets.
yeah. So that's the point. See, it's like my greatest learning from becoming a seeker from a spiritual sense, and that's the way to put it, has been that it's a very long and difficult journey. It's an extremely long and difficult journey. People who feel कि वो सदगुरु का एक वीडियो देख के वो enlightenment हो गया उनको, that's crap. You should drink Loki ka juice in the morning and feel happy. What I'm saying is, um, because and the reason is that you are fed a particular kind of there is a particular feed that you're given since childhood. So how old are you, Vignesh?
I am 29.
Correct. So 29 years, Vignesh has been given a particular conditioning. Okay, so Vignesh was born in a particular family. So therefore, that sort of decides about 70-80% of your life, in my opinion. Right? I mean, I believe in 100% destiny. And the difference between Vignesh and the security guard outside is the fact that Vignesh was born in a particular place and that guy was born in another place, right?
Absolutely.
That's the difference, and that's where it starts, right? You sort of were raised in a particular way. So conditioning starts. You had a particular set of teachers. You had no choice on any of it, right?
Yeah.
And the moment you start becoming aware and you feel that you are starting to make choices, right? They are not your choices. The point is there is a particular program that has been fed inside of you that is making the choice. You just feel you're making the choice. Right now, if I raise my hand, I feel I'm making a choice. It's not a choice. It's happening. So that is one of the biggest things about, and what do you derive out of the whole thing of deterministic philosophy, right? Which says that everything is sort of pre-written in a way, right? The point here is to one is to intellectually debate about it. Do you feel that everything is pre-written and therefore everything is deterministic, so I should just sit on my bed and do nothing, right? But the point is, if you were supposed to do that, you will do that only. You will get up because you're supposed to do something in life. It's like you're a machine, right? Vignesh is like the toaster. The toaster is supposed to toast bread. That's it. Okay, so if you're supposed to toast bread, you will toast bread, right? So the way to perceive a human being is to look at a human being like a machine. The machine has been built to for a certain output, right? The machine will is built for that output. The machine will give you that output, right? And that is where genes and conditioning come in. Genes is your genetic code that you've derived from your parents and your ancestors, and conditioning is the life that you've lived, which has conditioned you, right? That makes it together, right? So what? So okay, let's forget about the intellectual debate that can happen, because the whole thing about will and the feeling of individuality and I am doing this and I have done this, which is all the startup culture is about, that entrepreneurs have to feel that individuality in order to, because of course entrepreneurial journey is extremely lonely, right? And therefore that feeling of self-worth is very, very important. The feeling of self-worth is very, very important. So I'm not contesting that, but I'm just trying to derive what can be learned from uh, whatever Advait philosophy is. What Advait philosophy is that there is oneness. Everything is one, everything is the same, everything is pure consciousness, right? So the stone outside, the security guard which is downstairs right now, and me and you, everything is one, right? And everything is God, right? And this is the very, very succinct summary of it. And if you go into Buddhism, you go into Christianity, you go into any religion, you go to the most basic teachings before they started teaching you rituals and all that crap. This is what they taught. You read anything, they'll say the same thing, right? It's oneness. Advait is there is no duality. Advait means non-dual, right? So Ramana Maharshi was one of those people who, as a kid, as a 14-year-old kid, he realized this. He got a sudden awakening, right? And he left home, and eventually his disciples set up an ashram around him, and he never left that place. He never left that place. Never went anywhere. Um, and the teachings are about how do you destroy this individuality, this feeling of individuality. So what is this feeling of individuality? The feeling is I and the world. So the world exists because there is a separation from the world, which I am feeling, because I am Siddharth and the rest of it is the world. And therefore what happens? There is my wife, my son, my friends. So everything is I, right? And the whole circle is the concentric circle around this individual, which is built, right? And this is what is duality. Duality is the I and the world. And Advait says there is no I and there is no world. It's all one, right? So having gone into the to a little bit of this, what do you learn from it in terms of how do you live life, right? And whether entrepreneurs want to learn anything from it is up to them. But one of the things that is the biggest thing here is, when you want to see an enlightened person, right, the only way to identify that person, in my opinion, is humility. Okay, anybody who you feel has a sense of superiority, has a sense of saying we or I am better than others in some way or the other, and you'll see it in most of the modern gurus. So you watch the YouTube videos and you'll see it, like within 2 minutes you'll see it. You don't see any humility. And where does humility come from? Humility comes from the realization that everything is one, everything is the same, right? The security guard outside is inferior to you from a social strata perspective only because of his genes and conditioning. None of those things were in his control. Where you are, where I'm sitting right now, behind me are very nice kept speakers, right, is because of my genes and conditioning. So why do I have to feel that I am superior to him, I am better than him? And the moment you stop having that feeling, a kind of humility descends upon you. And the moment that humility descends upon you, the natural outcome is compassion. The natural outcome is to do good for others because you don't see the divide the way you used to see it. Like if you have you have food on the table and there's somebody sitting in front of you, you would offer that food to them, right? So that's the immediate compassion you feel for somebody who's sitting right in front of you. The same thing that is applied when you sit in a train, right, or in a plane, right, and you open your food. Like it used to happen in trains. Now it doesn't happen, but you have like you got food packed. You put it on the table, you start eating. There's a guy, there's a family sitting in front of you, right? How many people do offer it, right? First they feel whether they should offer it or not, so my point is, the moment you have that humility to understand that everybody is the same, it's not Hindu, Muslim, and all that crap and all that's riding over it. You there is this feeling that your well-being is derived from the well-being of others. Your happiness is derived from the happiness of others, because there is no division. And I know it's very hard to explain hard to understand for a lot of people, although it's nice to say it. But that, I think, this bit about humility and compassion is something that is like really missing. It's like I have seen like my way of appreciating a leader, is how kind, how compassionate, and how humble the leader is. I don't care about how smart the guy is, because smartness you can get dime a dozen. It's very easy to get it. Like India mein to matlab it's so hard not to be smart by the time you get to the top. It's extremely hard, but it's extremely easy to be an asshole. How does that work, man?
Correct. 100%. 100%.
So
No.
I don't know. The thing that I take away from it is is how to be nice, how to be kind, how to be generous, yeah, how to be compassionate. I think that's what I would tell entrepreneurs to develop.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because you said this right. So I remember, so before I left my previous company, I wrote an email to our president, the company president in India, managing director, and I was like, first job, early career professional. And the one thing that stood out to me, and I wrote that to him in an email, is that I really appreciated how you knew everybody's name, shook their hand, and looked them in the eye when you asked them, how are you?
Correct.
That I felt was like something I hadn't seen very often in other people. Because you're just talking about, like, how are you? Like, there is a tinge of insincerity and a lack of care in it.
How do you make a person feel it's genuine?
Yeah. And that warmth, you cannot simulate it.
Yeah.
And that sensation, you cannot simulate.
Correct.
And I think that comes only if you deeply care.
Correct.
And I want to go back to that point on humility for just a bit. I've always had trouble defining it. Okay, because people give bad examples to define humility.
Yeah.
Very bad examples. Like I was, but there was one moment where it was a light bulb moment for me. There was a David Brooks talk, and he had said that and he defined humility as accurate self-awareness, which I thought was a very interesting choice of words. Humility is actual self-awareness.
Yeah.
And it means that if you, for example, I will take all the bad examples people give. That, for example, the most common of which is, there is a project, you sat up and you did 80% of the work, 20% was done by others, and when it turns out well, you say that it's a team effort. That's not being humble.
No.
That is not being humble. You should say that, hey, this is what we've done, this is what it is, and on to the next one.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think, why is it that there are so many bad examples of humility out there? You have any thoughts on that?
I think it's more convenient to give those examples. It suits a
particular narrative.
Yeah, it suits a
particular
narrative.
Image.
Yeah, which is what most people want to subscribe to, because that's who they are.
Do you think people are comforted by these? Like somewhere, like I'll just unpack that a little bit more. So you know that is not the truth. Yet somewhere you have the misperception or the misconceived notion that if I frame this in this particular way, it will be better for the larger good.
That's the narrative that the leader builds for the organization, for the people around him. That's a different thing. But I believe that people are delusional enough to even not know that it is not the truth. I feel a lot of times we attribute a lot of we sort of blame people for being screwed up, but you have to just I know I'm talking a little bit of a cliche, but you have to just go into their lives to understand how they became what they are. It's like, I don't know whether you have realized this, or you're 29, you might not have, but you have a particular phase in your life where you hate your parents. Like I had that phase, like I disliked my parents, right? And I had like huge problems with a lot of things that the way my parents looked at a lot of things, right? And now I'm 44, and I see it. I see the point. I may not agree to it, okay, but I see where they were coming from, and what experiences led them to that particular perspective, and that's where I think happens to a lot of leaders also. It's like a lot of leaders I see, they believe in that shit. They actually believe in it, and that is not being cunning or conniving. That's actually like
It's like they believe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because
yeah,
I believed it, it'll be manifested eventually.
yeah, they believe in it, and that's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
they
yeah.
have lived their entire life. Now you tell
Yeah.
them that this is not true, they will not accept it.
Yeah, because
It's
because it's also a single point evidence argument, right?
Yeah.
Which is, if I am the locus of everything, okay, and everything that is happening around me turned out good because of the way I am, then why should I believe everything in the face of this limited set of experiences,
Yeah.
that what you are saying is true and what I have done so far so
Correct.
wrong is incorrect?
Correct. There is no reason, right? So self-awareness, I think also happens a lot of times in a life well lived. And when I say a life well lived, a life that has had struggles and setbacks and bad experiences, where you sit and you think about it, and you have the time to sort of feel, okay, is this all there is to it, or is there something else? And then you try to find, or you seek something else, right? And a lot of these folks haven't had the time to have either they have not been conditioned to actually do that at all. So that self awareness is not there. They feel that being nice to the waiter is humility.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Not doing that in a restaurant
Yeah,
and
not
calling
doing that
somebody
in a
or
restaurant is humility. And
yeah.
correct, but so that's the surface level of definition of humility. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, you're right about self-awareness. Self-awareness is what leads to humility. Self-awareness actually leads to what I was saying earlier: the understanding that you have achieved whatever you have achieved not because of you.
Yeah.
It's like Oasis said something very interesting. Lam Gallagher, who is a controversial figure and all, he said that he would not have been there if not for the Beatles, and
Yeah.
and it's true.
It's true.
And Beatles would not have been there if not for Little Richard, and Little Richard would not have been there if not for that that guy sitting in a bar one day who started singing, and Little Richard was 7-year-old and he saw him. So let's not attribute all the great things in life because of what I did. Yeah, like grow up. So self-awareness is about understanding the fact that you are a culmination of a lot of incidents that have happened because you needed to be made, and that's what builds humility. So self-awareness is understanding who you are, and who you are is what I'm talking about. So it's like what built you.
Yeah. So I'll ask this question. Did you visit Tiruvannamalai by any chance?
No, I never visited Tirunelveli. Actually, no, if you read Ramana Maharshi's teachings, he will say there's no need.
Yeah. No, I'm asking for a different for.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
He's basically like that prof who says that यार तुम्हें स्कूल आने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. ठीक है. You can figure everything out on your own, provided you're honest enough, committed enough, and you understand yourself well enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is like
Correct.
it's like open source.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You can sit and you can develop anywhere.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That's why he didn't
But-
write books, na. He wrote.
No.
He didn't
It's
write
actually even more incredible because you actually raised that, because It was not his, like, most gurus, since we are trashing them, and I'm also having a lot of fun doing it. Like, most of them are actually, I call them profit centers. Okay, not FIT, profit centers, because they direct their attention towards the organization and the administration of this this business conglomerate or business empire that they have built. And it's not just a Hindu thing. You can see any religion, it works the same way.
Correct.
Okay. The interesting thing, I think, is that this man, or this wise, enlightened man, was so detached that other people had to come and set it up around him. And because other people were doing it out of love, affection, devotion, etc., he said, fine, I will be here. I'm sure he didn't even say that, because he hardly ever spoke, right? And I'll come back to that's an interesting line. I'll come back to that. But I just asked because there are so many references to him and his work in the West, whether it's Arthur Osborne or Paul Brunton, and
Actually, Paul Brunton were his biographers. In a way, they wrote about his teachings and his life. But I think Somerset Maugham is an example.
My favorite. I was coming to that, which is
Razor's Edge.
that absolute classic. I think Somerset Maugham is one of my favorite writers in English. Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, where did you come across Ramana Maharishi's ideas for the first time?
See, I started sort of generally this example of the profit center is very interesting. It is the simile that I would like to use, or the mental image I have to use, is that you're in a hypermarket, and you're extremely hungry. You've not eaten for 7-8 hours. What will you go for?
The cheapest, fastest, easiest to consume.
Junk.
Absolutely.
Correct. So that's exactly what happens. See, what happens is when you start seeking, you genuinely start seeking when you've had a major setback in your life, or there's some problem in your life. Otherwise, it does not happen. Right? Unless your destiny is like that. Like you are like Ramana Maharshi की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं थी, हो गया. मतलब वो उस टाइप का आदमी नहीं हूँ मैं. मतलब मेरे साथ था कि प्रॉब्लम थी मेरी लाइफ में, and I had to find an answer which would help me cope with it.
Yeah.
Correct.
You had to read your way out of it.
Yeah, I had to read my way out. Oh, whatever I want to do, read your way, do puja,
walk, gym, jo
meditation
bhi hai,
करो, जो तुम्हें करना है करो, but you had to get your way out of it, right? Now, the first thing you consume is junk.
Yeah.
Okay, the first thing you consume is junk. Okay, so I started consuming junk. Correct. So, let's not talk about what junk I consume, but junk.
Fair.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then you realize junk is not solving the problem for me. Junk is offering immediate solutions, but junk is not solving the problem for me. Correct. So you progress. Then you feel practice. So I started meditating. Okay. I started praying. I used to actually spend time doing puja, which was great. Awesome. Like I feel that there is no one way to get somewhere. लोग कहते हैं वो पूजा वो मंदिर जाता है, is an idiot. No, यार. It's another way of getting there. It's all also okay. There is no problem. Idol worship is bullshit. No, it's not bullshit. It's absolutely awesome. Do idol worship. Do whatever you feel like doing here, as long as you're seeking, right? So the point is, then you start seeking. So I started meditating and all of that. And progressively, I started reading some of the ancient Hindu texts. And then I started reading Zen Buddhism. I started started getting an understanding of your ho kya raha hai, what is happening, right? And you tend to sort of, it slowly dawns upon you. It doesn't happen in a way because it's very hard to imbibe. And why it is hard to imbibe is because 29 years se jo tumhari conditioning hai na, it is against whatever that teaching is. It's absolutely contradictory to it.
Yeah. It's like philosophical white blood cells.
Yeah.
Like it's just there to defend any alien invasion or any infection against any other idea of what you are, who you can be, etc. Right?
Correct. जो आपको बचपन से बताया जाता है कि बेटा ये कर लो, बेटा after you do this you will be all set in life and all of that. Advaita teachings and all of these teachings come in and they say which
all that is
all that is crap, right? So eventually I was in that very ripe state where I needed a guru. See, what happens in spiritual seeking is you need one genuine guru.
Yeah.
And the guru's presence is not necessary. The guru's physical presence is not necessary.
Correct.
But you need one. Okay? And it's a process which is a predefined process that you will find one eventually if you are serious about seeking.
Yeah.
Right?
There's that Zen quote, right, which is a student willing to travel the world in search of a teacher, one appears next door.
Yes. Absolutely. It's absolutely true.
Yeah. 100% true.
So I landed at this book called Who Am I? I read the book and I was smashed. Like I remember I wrote an email to two of my best friends and I said, and that email subject was, "This is it." I did not understand the book properly. I'm not saying I can't claim to have understood the book at the time. And now, if you say understanding, yes. Have I imbibed that book completely? No. Right?
Yeah. It's like a great work of art, right? It's on repeat viewings you begin to understand details, nuances.
Correct. It's like Andaz Apna Apna, let's say.
Exactly.
Like you watch Andaz Apna Apna again and again, you see new jokes coming up, right?
New jokes, yeah.
So, and you find even the most innocent jokes funny. So that is what it was. So I that's how I discovered him, right? And then I started reading. And actually, one of the things with him is that one of the greatest things he said was that the greatest teaching is silence. Right? And the bit is, this is the most difficult thing to understand. It's the most difficult thing to understand. Yeah, silence is actually understood in very different ways. So what he would do is he would sit in the room that he used to sit in and not say a word. People will come sit around him, will not say a word. For 2 hours, he'll just keep sitting there.
Yeah. It freaked out a lot of his. I think it freaked out Somerset Maugham also the first time he went there.
So Somerset Maugham got ill.
Huh.
He got ill and he came in and he took care of him and he made sure he was okay, but he could not stay around. Because when your mind is always in flux, the presence of such a person just is daunting, man. It's impossible to comprehend that entity.
Yeah, there's discomfort with silence. Like if you notice, like silence is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like people want that chatter. People want that noise.
Yes. Because it relates to what's happening inside of them. It's like that's the way they've grown up. They've grown up to have that chatter in their head. They feel that chatter is necessary for survival. Without that chatter, they can't survive. Yeah.
And that chatter is basically that philosophical white blood cells.
Yeah.
Reinforcing the same messages again and again, because WBCs have no other agenda, only to protect and only to strengthen fortifications of your own identity in a certain sense.
Correct.
Same stories, you're revisiting the same past instances. You're replaying whatever didn't work out. You're replaying your greatest moments. You're in your head with your own film
and the future
and
the
future
and the
anxiety
about the future,
anxiety, fantasies, everything. Right.
Yeah.
And I think so I think there's a very interesting parallel here personally, because two stories. First, I hope you are enjoying my little tidbits and all other things I'm actually feeding in. But
I'm enjoying it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the first part is I actually had the sort of a reverse approach into reading about spiritual traditions. So I was in college and I was a big, you're in your early 20s and the Isaacson book on Steve Jobs comes out. And, you're like enamored and you're like, 90 hours a week and loving it, or 80 hours a week loving it, main banayega bada company, all those sort of things, right? And then the thing that stood out to me were what are the books that influenced him. Now, I haven't gotten to reading Autobiography of a Yogi yet, but I did read ZenMind, Beginner's Mind. And it's in my list of top 5 books I think everybody should read. Simply because there are certain the structure of the book is incredible, first and foremost. Second of all, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife of a book. It doesn't matter what the domain is. If you replace whatever you are seeking with meditation, the book will still make sense. Like I read it once, I could not believe how good it was. Again, like you, On repeat readings, it became even more wondrous. But when I began replacing meditation with, say, design or products or company building, the book still made sense.
Yeah.
And my favorite saying from that book, my favorite quote from that book is, to control a cow, give it a large enough field to graze. And I thought it was an amazing way to phrase things. That's number one. Number two is your reversion of going to the primary source, where you went back, like the junk thing that you spoke of, it hit to me in parallel because I used to read a lot of newspapers. Now I exclusively don't read newspapers. Like if anybody comes and tells me that, this is happening, that is happening, I ask what is your primary source? Seedha. And I go and if I read anything in a newspaper, even by mistake, or if it comes on my WhatsApp or anything, I go look what the study is, I look who's performed it, I go look that up directly in the paper itself, because it eliminates the lie that is actually in between.
Yeah.
Look at the primary source for yourself and come to your conclusions.
Correct.
And I am surprised that we are willing to do it. I'm very surprised that, many people are willing to do it for other things except their own internal development. Why is that?
Because they're not sure what they'll find. And the other bit is, I think, they don't know that there is a need to find.
Oh, okay. So they are complicit in their own sense of.
Complicit means attributing some act which is willed, which I don't want to do. I don't believe in it. Okay, but it's about saying that if let's say you were sold a particular life, and you completely believe in that life that you've been sold, why would you like to look other way, in any other direction? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, if, let's say, and I've seen this happening in a lot of people. So, music, right? So, you were told by your college seniors, Led Zepp hai, bhaiya, Led Zepp hai. Led Zepp suno, scene khatam hai tumhara. Uske baad Pink Floyd, Division Bell sun lo, bas ho gaya. Tumhe kuch sunne ki zarurat nahi hai, right?
Yeah.
You meet the same guy now, he's still listening to Led Zepp only. He's not listening to anything else. He's at Led Zepp. What do you call it? Pink Floyd, and that too not Pink Floyd early. He's at Pink Floyd Division Bell and he's still listening to that. And he's listening to 2-3 other bands, and that's it, right? Because he's been conditioned to believe this is music.
This is it.
There's nowhere
nothing
else to look.
Yeah,
right?
Nothing above, nothing below.
So,
Led Zepp is Led Zepp. It's like a guy wanting to drive a car at only 60.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yahi karna hai tumko.
Haan.
So the point is, the seeker mindset is not there.
Yeah.
The seeker mindset is not there, and it's not needed maybe. Right? So the thing is, what happens is there an impetus for the seeker mindset? Right? Either it's there already, or there is an impetus for it. There can be only two possibilities. So there are people who are natural seekers. Like, if you tell me today that I have to buy a neck pillow, right? I'll go and I'll research neck pillows to death. Right? That is how I am. Like, I will find out every possible neck pillow. What do these neck pillows do? Why they do it? What is the best neck pillow for me? I will figure it out. Then I'll buy it, right? So I am like, if I get into coffee, I got into coffee recently about an year and a half back, right? Now I don't want to get into coffee like the way people get into coffee, that they enjoy drinking coffee. I want to get into coffee. Right?
Yeah.
I want to understand where it came from. How, at what texture do you grind it for what machine? I want to get into.
Where are the seeds from? Where are the beans from? How is it roasted?
Yeah, with the outcome, for me, the outcome is to make the perfect cup of coffee for myself. Okay?
Perfect.
Right? That is the outcome that I'm seeking. And for that, I'll seek out all information possible, right? So for me, so that seeker mindset, when it's missing, right, then you believe in a particular narrative because that is convenient. And then you don't want to look out, right? You don't want to look at anything alternate, and it's okay, right? It works.
It's almost like I want to say that if you are, it's like becoming a seeker is like getting into some kind of a fight club, is how I would say it.
Yeah.
Right. The first rule of seeker club is everything you've been told is a lie.
Yeah.
The second rule of seeker club is everything you've been told is a lie. And then, it's almost like you have to first be willing, because the first step itself is
correct.
The first step itself is so hard.
Yeah.
Because 30 years of conditioning, 20 years of conditioning, 40 years of conditioning
Correct.
to come to the realization that everything is a farce.
Yeah.
And then to blow that building up and rebuild it from scratch. It's difficult.
It's very difficult. One thing I want to add here, I'm sorry to.
No, please.
Is I think people don't read enough. So what happens is very simple. Like you have these people who have distilled their a particular point in their lives or their particular whatever insights they have, right, into a book, right? And the thing with is, why am I able to talk like this in terms of saying, and you are able to talk like this, is if you look back and see who has influenced you, right? It will be a lot of people that you've never met or known, because these people either put out a great album, right? And I give equal importance to movies and music and books, because I feel that you cannot be limited to a media and say ki books are awesome and everything else is crap. That's not true. I think listening to a great Paul McCartney album is as good as reading any book, and I'll stand by it. So what I'm getting at is that exposure is not there, right? So the only narrative that you have with this is the narrative that society is feeding you now. What is the narrative? You've not read Catcher in the Rye, so there is no way of you understanding what teenage angst is like.
Correct.
So will you feel teenage angst? You feel teenage angst, you will ignore it, because you feel, this is not how I should feel. I should be studying for my 10th exam. I don't care.
No. If the other way you said it is equally true. You don't need to necessarily read Catcher in the Rye to understand teenage angst. I can go listen to Green Day.
Yes, you can go and listen to Green Day. Absolutely.
The fact that I said Green Day ages me very greatly. Okay.
I said Pink Floyd, man. I said Led Zeppelin.
No. But Pink Floyd is comparatively timeless. So Green Day is not there yet.
Green Day is timeless too. It's
okay. Okay. That's actually interesting. So, what are the albums that you go? Okay, are you a full album guy or are
full
you
album Full album guy.
Acha.
Full album guy, man. Yeah, hardcore full album guy. Because see, the artist has thought of something, right? He's not the artist has not thought of making a best of compilation, right? That band who's thought of making a best of compilation, I'm not going to listen to. Sorry.
Correct. Yeah.
I want the what's, I want the mistakes, I want the fuck ups in that album.
Dude, since you're a Pink Floyd guy, do you listen?
I'm not a Pink Floyd guy. I'm not a Pink Floyd.
No, but you must have heard some Pink Floyd.
I have heard a lot of Pink Floyd. My favorite album is Atom Heart Mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want a lot.
Did you have a chance to listen to Alan Parsons' project?
Yeah, I heard Alan Parsons' project.
Dude, I heard Alan Parsons and I was like, that was my this is it moment. Okay, because I heard Alan Parsons and I was like, this guy's CV is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he puts out an album, and I don't listen to Alan Parsons all the time. Okay. My Alan Parsons trips are like, once in every 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or once in every 5 years.
Correct.
But I always go back to it for the sonic quality of those albums.
Correct.
They sound timeless.
Yeah,
they sound like they were recorded like, last year or last week or something.
Correct.
Which brings me to another question. Do you consume any music that was made in the last 5 years?
Last 5 years. Okay. Bollywood is out. Last 30 years of Bollywood is out, except maybe 1942, A Love Story. So that's about it. Bollywood dismissed.
Bollywood dismissed. Okay.
Sorry, I might sound vain and shit, but I don't think Indian music.
It's what works for you, man. It's what you don't care.
And the other bit I was talking to somebody about is that I don't relate to it, and maybe I don't relate to it because my first heartbreak I listened to Beatles for Sale. And I said, "Ki Not a Second Time is the greatest song ever written," right? So because it was about Not a Second Time is a George Harrison song in which he says that it's about the fact that the girl broke his heart and now she's sending him feelers again.
Yeah.
And he says not a second time,
Yeah.
And I had gone through that in school.
It's basically a self-care song.
Yeah, self-care song. George Harrison songs were all self-care songs.
Completely self-care.
Yeah, I Need Mine, Not a Second Time. So anyway, so in music in the last 5 years, very good question. No, man. Because I think the problem is इसका एक और issue है. इसका issue है ना कि discovery का problem है. I believe that there is great music being done. For example, there are few bands that I really like which are recent, but they are still ancient from the perspective of saying last 5 years. Like for example, Spoon is a band which is lovely. It's a great band. Galaxy 500, which is now disbanded. So, but maybe it's about discovery, right? And the point is that I feel is there enough that has been discovered from what has happened in 70s and 80s? I keep discovering new artists that I feel like that song, like तुम मुझे क्यों नहीं मिले पहले वाला गाना है ना शाहरुख खान का, इसी बात पे मैं something, right? So I recently discovered this guy called John Prine. Okay, he's like a semi-country rock artist. 1970s. He died of coronavirus in 2021, and I was blown, man. Like this guy is so good. And मैंने उसके पहले 3 albums सुने हैं. उसका पहला album, his first album was released in 73, and it's post Vietnam War. And the first debut album is so pessimistic.
Yeah.
Like this guy is 25 and he's already like done with life. And then you see the life journey. You go to the next album. You see sparks of hope coming up. Like this guy has now got somebody to love. So things have got. So that's why I like albums, because albums are a slice of a person's life in a way.
Yeah.
You get an insight on that person's life. What's going on in his life.
So again, I'll put you in the spot. Top 5 albums of yours, not all time. Top 5 albums that mean the most to you.
Top 5 albums that mean the most to me. Yeah, Beatles White Album, because more Beatles is good Beatles. So Beatles White Album is like it's like amazing. So that is one. I would say what I really related to, right? I mean, the albums which saved me. I think that would be the better way of putting it.
Perfect. That's the perfect way to put it, actually. Yeah.
Band on the Run by Paul McCartney. Again, I know I'm still talking Beatles. In fact, it's very hard to go outside the Beatles. Plastic Ono Band by John Lennon, which is the first album he released after Beatles disbanded. Primal Scream album, absolutely beautiful album. So 3 Beatles album ho gaye, Beatles bandmates ke album. So I have to give credit to others. But Kings. Again, I'm staying at 60s.
I'm getting that. Yeah.
Kings is mind blowing, yeah. Like Ray Davies is out of the world. I have never seen a better writer in my life. So Museville Hillbillies by Kings, 81 album. There is a line, you take all your smart fucking writers, smart modern writers, give me William Shakespeare in that in that first song, I'm a 20th century man, which is a beautiful song. The whole album is awesome. So Museville Hillbillies will be 4. I think I'll have to give you a longer list, which I won't do in this podcast. I'll bore everybody the shit out of everyone. But I think Kings, and I have to give one recent album, like fairly relatively recent album. I'll have to think of one. It's very difficult to think of one. Getting out of 60s, 70s काफी difficult है. But there is this band that I discovered recently, and I thought they're not well known, and I want as many people to know about them as I can possibly circulate. So if anybody's the Authors, Auteurs. Okay, and their album called New Wave. Okay. It's a 93 album, so that 93 के beyond शायद मैं गया ही नहीं.
अच्छा, I agree.
But New Wave is stunning album. It's a must hear. Yeah. So those are my.
So before we go into the rapid fire, I'll share a few which have made the most impact on me.
Yeah.
And in no order. I hope I even have a list. I remember making a list, but I don't know the order. So one of the albums I absolutely love is John Mayer, Where the Light Is. Yeah. That's his live in Los Angeles album, which I think is an amazing album. Number 2 is there's this Australian guitarist called Pliny, and he has an album. I'm missing the name right now. So there's a song in it called, I think it's called Impulse Voices. Yeah, it's called Impulse Voices. Incredible album. Then Arctic Monkeys, they have an album called AM, which I think is probably the best, like such a fun album to listen to.
Yeah.
Then there's a rapper called Nas, and then he had his first album in I think 94 or I don't remember 94, 92. It's called Illmatic. I think I must have heard it like so many times because it's that good. And that ties back to your notion of, you know, structured storytelling.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly like that. I think I got 4, and I think number 5 is very difficult. I will leave it because I have to.
You were an old man. You name a classic.
I name a classic.
Yeah.
Name a classic. I will say. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but okay, fine. I really like. It's a tie, okay, between Steely Dan.
Yeah,
and
Steely Dan, awesome man.
Steely Dan is great. Steely Dan and I think or Gaudi by
as a musicianship,
top level, top tier.
You play Steely Dan on a speaker, right? That's the only way to test a speaker.
It's a tie between I think I hope I'm getting the name right, Aja or something. Aya or something. I don't know what it's pronounced. I don't know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, I remember. I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gaudi by the Alan Parsons Project.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so those are my top 5.
Awesome.
So we'll go into the rapid fire. We are running short of time.
I know.
So
Let's do that.
Thoda heavy duty rahega, but you need to help me out. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Number 1, what's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
Read more. Yeah.
Awesome. Which ties to number 2. What books have changed the way you think and engage with the world?
The first book that really blew me apart was Fountainhead, and I know that it's like cliched thing to say, but when you read Fountainhead when you're in class 11th, it blows you. And no matter how lightly we take Ayn Rand, it's okay. I mean, I can also say that Ayn Rand was like an idealist and she had like a particular perspective in life and all of that. But yes, Fountainhead. Because I have to speak the truth, right? I can't pretend to be right liking somebody just because the heck of it, right? I think Cash 22, Joseph Heller, stunning book. The point is just get through the first 100 pages. Nobody does that, and therefore they never get into it. Any P.G. Wodehouse, Jeeves and Wooster book, absolute course in writing. It's like, I don't think anybody writes as fluently, as beautifully as Wodehouse. It's the same story being told again and again and again, and you don't get it. You keep reading it, you keep going for more. Wodehouse is God. So that is Wodehouse. I recently, I think, started reading a lot of Japanese poetry. So there is a book of Japanese there is a collection of Japanese poetry which has been like going from the last 16th century, from the 16th century, and has come till now. They actually, Japanese respected the fact that poetry doesn't need to be very complex. Poetry doesn't need to say something very deep or pithy. Poetry just needs to express what it is. Like poetry should be like a song. Right, correct. It's like Paul McCartney saying, "Why don't we do it on the road?" and that's about it. So it's like so that collection of poems was very, very impressive. Amongst the classics, I thought Great Expectations by Charles Dickens is awesome as a book. Nobody did a very good adaptation of it, but it's an awesome book. Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger's short stories also great to learn writing also. In fact, apart from the fact that they're also good. Relatable. See, the problem is you pick books which actually resonate with you, and what has resonated with me has been some kind of a rebellion against how things are. And if you see the pattern, you'll always find the music I pick, the movies I pick, or the books I pick resonating with that, right? So these are the books that I really like. Or in for example, Shakespeare, I happen to be in ICSE, and that the greatest thing about ICSE is that they force you to read Shakespeare. That's so awesome, man. I am telling you, the greatest.
It's a life changer. It's a game changer.
Correct. I studied Julius Caesar, and dude, awesomest. Julius Caesar is so good, and so
Yeah,
Julius
yeah, yeah.
Caesar is also one of my favorite
That's,
books.
in fact, it's because of ICSE I found out about Somerset Maugham and I began reading even more
Yeah,
and more.
yeah.
Yeah,
Somerset Maugham, Razor's Edge, right?
yeah,
Was like when I read it in college. I didn't
yeah,
know it's influenced by Ramana Maharshi and all, but I used
yeah.
to carry that book everywhere with me for about a week
Oh,
after reading it also.
nice.
Yeah.
So awesome. My next question is, what annoys me about other people that I sometimes do myself?
What annoys me about other people? I don't listen to others at times. So I think I'm a bad listener, but I'm not aware of it.
Ah, okay, nice. What's your go-to method for overcoming procrastination or writer's block?
Our go-to method to overcome, I don't overcome procrastination, writer's block. I don't think that is a concept that exists for
Acha.
me, because I think writing or creative process, creative process is something that again is an extremely mysterious process. Okay, you don't know where it's coming from, and in fact I've realized this. It's my own personal experience that when I was writing my first novel, I didn't know how to end it. I went into the washroom, I was staring at myself in the mirror, and I got the end. And if you say that it is me who wrote the end, I don't believe it, man. Don't convince
Correct.
me of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the great, and of course, I'm not comparing myself with it, but with any of them. But if you say that the greatest musicians will be humble enough to agree that the tune did not come
Yeah.
to them on their own, or
Yeah, oh,
right?
this is Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, no, this is, if you've seen the Get Back documentary.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Get Back documentary? He composes
No, not
Get
yet.
Back. Okay, you have to watch
Yeah.
it, because that Peter Jackson has redeemed himself after making Lord of the Rings by making Get Back documentary.
Okay.
But-
Oh, so you're anti Lord of the Rings?
no, I'm not anti Lord of the Rings, but I found it a little boring.
Okay.
But that's my view. Like, I found all
That's
of these
okay, yeah, yeah.
trilogies a little boring, like
Okay.
including Star Wars after a point.
Okay.
Because it's making a very simple point, but it's like taking a lot of time to make that point. So,
Right.
so what I'm trying to get at is that so where does it originate from? Is very what was the question again?
What is your go-to method for overcoming
There is no go-to
procrastination?
method.
or-
You just tend to make a lot of notes and keep
Uh-huh.
making notes, right? So I feel that a book gets made only when a notebook gets filled. So first you have
Nice.
to fill up a notebook with notes, right? And half of those notes you'll discard eventually because they are bad ideas. But you have to keep making those notes. And once you've made enough number of notes, you fill the notebook. You're so invested in the process of what we call skin in the game.
Correct.
I like that. I like that word.
Great term.
For one, right? Yeah, the skin in the game has to be created. The moment you have created the skin in the game, right? There is no procrastination, yaar. कौन सा procrastination?
Understood. If you could time travel to any era in history for a week, where and when would you go and why?
Stephen Hawking has proved that time travel to the past is not possible, but
No, this is not a technical question. We are not.
that's the great point about, like,
yeah.
the thing is
Yeah.
that I think in modern society we are so consumed by Elon Musk that we have stopped asking the most basic questions about life in terms of who we are and why we are here, and stopped asking them seriously. So that's why quoting science has become so hip. But what I'm trying to your question is, which point in time would I like to go back to? The point in time where there was as much respect attributed to philosophy, as much respect attributed to arts as it is to science and business in our time currently.
Understood. I will also be very honest in my admission that this is a very stupid question, because when we think of the inductive economy, it's about going into the future. It's not about looking at the past and coming back.
Yeah.
So I will have to rework this question. So thank you very much for making me realize that by saying that it's not possible, and it's also not even in the ethos of what you're trying to achieve. So if you could, my next question is, if you had to condense your life philosophy into one sentence, what would it be?
Be humble, be kind.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What's a recent discovery or a piece of information that has blown your mind?
Recent discovery or piece of information that has blown my mind. Oh yeah, that's a very good question. I think John Prine. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In music,
Superb.
John Prine blew out my mind. Like it was like there are when you watch a movie. When I watch a movie, because I'm a writer, right? I watch a movie and I say most of the time the thing is when I watch a movie I say, yeah, ये तो मैं भी लिख सकता था, कोई
Ah,
fight नहीं है. But when something surprises you to the extent that you feel this is too good to be true, right? That's when your mind gets blown, right? And the same way it goes for music or for books, right? In a way. So I think, for example, there is a guy called Mizuki,
hmm.
Seijun Mizuki. He's a graphic artist, and
Mm-hmm.
he was in now he's no more. And they have Japan has renamed a station after him, and there is a so he's hugely respected, and he's written this book on Japanese soldiers' lives during the Second World War, and how miserable they were, and it's a graphic book.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
was
I have to check that out.
I'll tell you
Very
the
good.
name of the book, but that book was like absolutely mind blowing, and that was the book that caused me to get unMind. I wanted to write unMind in the graphic medium because I realized the beauty of the graphic medium. There is a scene in that book which has this thing that the Americans abandon a camp, and the Japanese soldiers come in, and the first thing that they're looking for they're looking for is chocolates, because they know that they'll never get a chocolate in their life, and Americans have them.
Wow.
And,
Definitely.
yeah,
Uh,
Shigeru Mizuki.
I will definitely check it out.
Yeah,
What's the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received, and who gave it to you?
valuable piece of advice I ever received. I think again that advice was around the fact that I think I had some kind of a superiority complex at
Mm-hmm.
a particular point in my life, where I used to believe that I I because I don't believe in any of this bullshit, I'm better than everybody else, which is where you start from when you're young most of the time. You have whether you want to admit it or not, everybody has this feeling that मुझे पता है इन लोगों को नहीं पता है,
Understood.
right?
Yeah.
And I think somebody told me not so many words to grow the fuck up. And I think, and somebody, and there is this movie, Ryan Gosling's movie, when Ryan Gosling plays somebody who is a little mentally challenged. If that is a word in vogue, I don't think that word is in vogue right now, but I'll use that word because I don't know any better.
Hmm.
And he asked his older brother, that when do you think you become an adult, right?
Hmm.
It's Lars and the Real Girl. The movie is called
Hmm.
Lars and the Real Girl.
Okay.
Okay, and the older brother says, when you start thinking about others,
Nice.
that is the line he says, right? And I think that line was the line when I watched that movie. At that point, I was like all about I, me, mine, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
I realized that I'm not an adult.
So, which ties into my next question. What are three films you recommend our listeners to watch that's had a massive impact on you?
यार मैं तो just to be snobbish, I will talk about like neo modern European
हाँ हाँ
cinema
हाँ,
and
खुल के बात कीजिए, मैं भी बड़ा फैन हूँ.
हाँ, लेकिन for example, if I had to talk about one movie from that time which I thought was really impressive, was I, Vitlioni by Fellini.
Mm-hmm. I love Fellini. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Superb movie.
I love Fellini.
Knights of
Kebab, sorry, not
yeah,
kebab,
yeah,
Calabria.
Calabria,
Yeah,
and but I like that one more because I related to it more than Knights of.
yeah.
So that is one movie that was amazingly good. I don't like Nolan at all, so that goes out. I don't have the patience to watch him, and I don't have the patience to appreciate him. So in the current set of writers and the current set of movie makers, Sri Ram Raghavan,
Mm-hmm.
Andhadhun, Mind blown. I was mind blown. कि इंडिया में कोई इतना अच्छा लिख सकता है. Because I have given up on most of them. So that is one guy. And Sri Ramana, any movie. In fact, I have not watched Agent Vinod, so I can't comment on it. But even Johnny Gadar was awesome. Very well written. Then well, there has to be one more. I have to name 3 movies, right?
Yeah.
So I think American movie तो कोई तो नाम लेना चाहिए मुझे यार. ऐसा तो हो नहीं सकता कि American movie का नाम ले लूँ मैं. No, I'm not able to name one. So let it be. But I'll talk about one movie called Pickpocket by Robert Bresson.
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah. So Pickpocket by Robert Bresson. Bresson is a movie that shows to you that storytelling is not about acting. Storytelling is not about how you set the scene. Storytelling is absolutely organic. You can pick people from the street and make them act, and it will still be the most compelling story ever told. I think Bresson was the guy who actually broke everything. Every formula that you could believe in, Bresson broke that formula. So Pickpocket is amazing. I rewatched it recently. Awesome movie.
So I hope you had a great time talking.
I had a great time talking to you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for giving me the space to talk to you the way I wanted to talk to you. Because I think this conversation went in a very different tangent. So I'm not sure how happy other people in your team will be, but I hope
that's okay. That's okay. If they have learned anything from this podcast, it is that the fact that we are happy, they should be happy. So I'll end it at that. Thanks so much, Sid.
Cool. Thanks, Vignesh.
And there you have it, folks, a captivating journey through the intricate realms of technology, economics, and the profound individual autonomy that defines our evolving landscape. I hope you have enjoyed this inaugural episode of the Inductive Economy, and a big shout out to our incredible guest, Siddharth Tripathi, for gracing us with his wisdom, insights, and delightful banter on startups and culture and music and movies. And as we wrap this episode, I want to express my deep gratitude to you, our amazing listeners. Your curiosity and engagement makes everything we do here at ContraMinds possible, and we can't wait to bring you more thought-provoking conversations in the episodes to come. So stay tuned for an exciting lineup of guests as we continue to unravel the tapestry of innovation, science, technology, and economics. Remember, the journey of inductive exploration is just the beginning. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Thanks for being a part of the Inductive Economy community, and until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep embracing the inductive wonders that shape our world. Cheers.